Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. And, well, it really is a pleasure, finally, to be able to introduce to you Emilio Álvarez and to welcome him here to Notre Dame and you to his talk. I say finally, actually, not merely in the sense that he's delayed since yesterday, but that from the moment of his appointment and acceptance of the job, we've been in correspondence with one another about his desire to come here and our desire to host him, given the centrality of the role that Notre Dame and the Center for Civil and Human Rights have played in the inter-American system over so many years. So it's been something that has been in the works far more than just a few days or a few hours, and delayed by much more than just United Airlines, but delayed in part because the role of the executive secretary is one that is immense in the inter-American system. You had, until a moment ago, his biography up there. I don't think I really need to tell you more than what you were probably all reading in the minutes that we were waiting, but it is worth saying a word about the role that Emilio Álvarez plays as executive secretary, even more than his biography. For better and for worse, depending on the context, depending on the audience and so forth, the executive secretary is the face of the commission more often than not. In an environment in which the commissioners come and go, in which the commissioners are temporary figures and part-time figures, the executive secretary of the commission has, throughout its entire history, been the sort of the figure that provides it continuity and constancy, who often appears in public, who helps to craft some of the policies, who helps to bring the commissioners together, and above all, of course, to administer and oversee the enormous role of the staff that is critical to everything from drafting the reports related to contentious cases to scheduling visits and hearings and so forth. And in this period of time, this particular executive secretary, Emilio Álvarez, has been dealing with perhaps even more than his share of turbulent times at the OAS and at the Commission. Times of reforms and putative reforms that are really attacks. Times of transition in the Secretary General of the OAS. Times of great conflicts and transitions with some of the states in the region. We all know that history, but it's worth pointing out that this is the person who has, in a distinctive way, been called to try to guide the Commission through the shoals of these turbulent waters. So, Emilio, we're very, very happy to be able to greet you to Notre Dame and to hear from you about what the Commission's been doing and to learn from you about its future. Please welcome Emilio Álvarez.
Hi, everybody. Certainly how Professor Carosa says, I've been trying to come here since when I was a child. Not only because yesterday I started having a very intense relationship with United since yesterday afternoon. Today morning we just were laughing. Come on, 8 messages? No, come on, and they changed it, plane, crew, gate. But, well, certainly more than 2 years ago we've been talking about this. And I wanted to start, join Notre Dame community honoring Father Ted, not only for this university, but also for the human rights movement as a very great man. His testimony, his heritage is not important only for you. It is very important for the community, for the countries, for those who fight in the very darkest times. With his testimony, we are very proud of what he does. Not only because of the center, but also because of, for example, when he started his center fighting against apartheid in South Africa and tried to change this country in this link between civil and human rights. So what he did is also part of our heritage. So I want to join. I know that this is a sad time for you, but it's also time to build hope, as he did. So please be very sure that we all in the Commission want to send you this message, honoring him as part of our heritage. And we are certainly very, very proud of that. I hope that in the future we will find so many Father Teds. We really need them, wherever they are. And certainly I know that he's going to keep going, do what he knows how to do it. So thank you very much for that to Notre Dame community. And I want to share, I don't know how, shall I push this? Okay. We're going to talk some. I know that you've been discussing, analyzing what is going on with the Commission. So this is more like an update. And then we're going to have some time with questions. And feel free to write it down. And maybe at the end we can have an interchange of that. And those are the questions that we want to talk today. I want just to give a quick note about the frame. The Commission is an independent body, but certainly we have a dialogue with the organization. Douglas can talk about that. We used to be at the same permanent council, talking with the permanent bodies, political bodies, about our job. And it's not certainly a very peaceful relationship. From time to time is a tension, because the Commission is an independent body. But nowadays, human rights became an indicator. Defending and promoting human rights today is an indicator of democratic governance. And from time to time, there is different conception about that. It is not only a question of how do we face human rights violation in the past. There are some heavy and extraordinary work in the region of that. Or how do we face human rights today? And that's not certainly an easy dialogue. So with the Permanent Council and some others, there are these 4 pillars. And we've been fighting for this. It's not the same as 60 years ago. The Inter-American Commission is maybe the oldest human rights body, certainly in the region. But we have a very intensive dialogue with United Nations. So at the end of the day, there is a strong connection with the idea of democracy. So human rights became a substantive idea of democracy. And the challenge of human rights for everyone. And that's a challenge, not only in this country. When you talk about migrants, or when you talk about justice, but also in Canada and Mexico, Caribbean, and of course South America. So there is a relation, and that's part of the debate in this kind of organization, the Organization of American States. As you know, the mandate, there are 3 main ideas about the mandate: protection, monitoring, and promotion. And certainly today there is an idea of what kind of agenda is needed when we talk about protecting and promoting human rights. Because we are not in a scenario where dictatorships are majority in the region. But that do not mean that there are no human rights violations. In fact, we are having certain serious challenges with those so-called democracies. Because some of the presidents come from the time to fight against dictatorships. Some of them think, because they are in power, there are not human rights violations anymore. And we have a totally different perspective. Democracy is not the rule where there are not human rights violations. Democracy is the rule where you face it faster. So those presidents with a democratic profile should be those who lead in the indignation, not to lead in the how you say negation? Denial. And that's the main challenge of the region. Because certainly the time is different. So how do we protect human rights? We have a lot of human rights institutions in the region. We have constitutional reforms. We have certain institutional bodies inside the governments, public policy. So what is the role of an international organization like the Commission when we talk about protection? In the last 10 years, we have double of complaints. Is that a good indicator? Is that a bad indicator? If we have more complaints, more petitions, are there more human rights violations? Or do we face a different environment where you can go outside without any repression? That's the kind of dialogue that we are having now in the region and with some other. And that's also when we talk about monitoring human rights. What's the agenda? 25 years ago, even 10 years ago, talking about LGBTI issues as human rights agenda was not common. Talking about environment, mining, infrastructure, and indigenous communities. What's going on with torture today? Is torture an issue today? So those are the kind of debates that we are having when we talk about monitoring. And promotion. What about public policy? The Commission is a body where when we try to face a case as a useful way to face also the cause. Through certain case, a paradigmatic one, you can also talk about what's going on in the structural problem. Is that public policy? Do we need to talk about public policy and human rights in the region? Or do we need to face only cases? That's the kind of debates that we are having when we talk about promotion today. It's not only training and programs and even programs like Notre Dame has. They are all over the region now. So what's the kind of challenges that university has in this particular time looking at the region? As you know, the Commission is under 35 states, and I say 35 intentionally, because Cuba do not quit the chapter. So in our consideration, Cuba is on our mandate. We included them in our report. We present precautionary measures and different activities. They do not answer written, but politically, yes, certainly. Just let me give you an example. Last year, Joanny Sanchez went to the office in DC, and we were talking to her. And she told us, you know, Cuban government do not answer to you, but certainly they cares about you. I went to a demonstration, and when a police came to me, another one said, be careful, she's under international human rights body protection. Maybe you hear about Damas de Blanco, ladies in white. We have a hearing with them, and the Commission presented a precautionary measure asking the government to release the leader. The very next day of that hearing, she went afraid. So, we have political answers, certainly. Some others not as positive as this, of course. There are some tension also. But what I want to remark is that if there is a universal body, it's the Commission. Because nowadays they debate about universalization, and they talk about the court, they talk about the convention. But look out Venezuela. They went out of the court. So at the end of the day, we are the last word in human rights about them. So the Commission, we run all this area with different kind of relationship, depend on the way of every country develop their own human rights agenda, legal framework, And the relationship with the system is totally different. Argentina is quite old. Brazil and Mexico, relatively new regarding the court. Costa Rica, Peru, El Salvador, with particular experience that they have, or Caribbean. So it is not the same. It is totally different. And you have to keep that on mind. Because when we talk about the system, we used to lose the difference between countries and regions. Even countries like Costa Rica and Guatemala. Guatemala is in a totally different situation today. So it is very important to keep that in mind. I won't talk about legal framework. It's just to bore you. No. It's just to let you know about so many that we have. And until today, there is a big gap about this. Only 7 of those 35 already ratified every treaty. That means that only 1 of each 5 is under the old rule of this. 50, 30, 20 years after. This year is going to be the 30th anniversary of the Convention Against Torture. And we have only 21 countries inside of that convention. Torture. We are not talking about such a big debate about that. Hope so. But until today, just 21 countries ratified the American Convention Against Torture after 30 years. So we still need to push for this. Not only in the legal conception, the adoption, and the national ruling. And now there is a very, very good debate about how do we think about international law. For example, in my country, some people say, no, it is not international law. It is national law that comes from international source, which is a totally different perspective. There are someone who's talking about post-constitutional states. When this kind of conventions is added to the constitution. And there are some states under this conception, which is totally different than we had 30 years ago. As you know, the commission is composed by 7 commissioners. We will have elections this year. This year is like a big combo. We will have Secretary General next, in fact, 2 weeks from this Wednesday in 2 weeks. Deputy Secretary General, 4 commissioners, and 4 judges. So what will happen this year could be a totally different scenario about the Inter-American system of human rights. These are the 7. Felipe González is from Chile. He's going to end his mandate next December. He's going to be 8 years in the commission next December. Kim Caballero, which is from the United States, he just came in. Tracy Robinson, which is our president, she's going out. Now, maybe you hear about Margaret Macaulay. She's going to run for the commission, which means that there will be, if that's the case, a very interesting situation where a former judge became a commissioner. That could be something very interesting. And also, it is the sign of some Caribbean countries as Jamaica involved in the system, which is really important. Rosa Maria Ortiz, she's from Paraguay. She's tried to be reelected. But the government is still thinking about it. Because she comes when Lugos times. And this government is totally different. So she's having a lot of support from the region, but not from his government, her government. So she's a quite particular situation. Then we have Rosemary Antoine. She's from Trinidad and Tobago. She, until today, and I think she won't be in a candidacy again. So that means that these three ladies will be out of the commission next December. He's Paulo Vanucci. He's from Brazil. He is a very interesting case because he was, I think, 2012. He was running to be a commissioner. But because of Belomonte's debate, he went to the bench. And then he came again. And now Brazil is in a totally different relationship with the Commission. And one of the reasons is because of Paulo is here. And he's Jesus Orozco. So Jim, Paulo, and Jesus, for sure, they will stay. We won't look, in these cases, change it. But we don't know what will happen. And certainly, until today, we have just three candidates: Colombia, Panama, and Jamaica. We will see what will happen. And there are 5 candidates for the court, for 4 positions. Is that a message? Are the states looking for the court instead of the commission? So that's the kind of things that we have to read between lines. The kind of programs, maybe you already know, I just want to remark, we have this strategic plan. This year we're going to end this, and we are starting the new one, which is the framework of our activities. It is the base of our relationship with donors. When they said, who is the one that decides the programs or the projects? Based on this, the Commission decides. If you want to take an eye, you can look it on our website. And we have 3 kind of principles in this. We are trying to improve the access to victims. We are trying to change some efficiency in the process. We are in the middle of a restructuration process in the Secretariat and even in the Commission. And how do we face the compliance about the Commission decisions? Any kind of reports, regulatory measures, visits. Based on these 2 ideas, autonomy and independence, and the idea of how this certain kind of actual debate about defense and promotion of human rights. But I want to remark this idea of independence. I used to be an ombudsman, a Mexico City ombudsman. And I saw some of my colleagues in the region. They call Defensor del Pueblo. But some of them could be called Defensor del Puesto. Defender of the job. So the question of autonomy is an essential, a key question. If you want to control power, you have to be independent. And that refers also on the conception of what are you doing. This certain tendency to talk about legal framework. And you need just lawyers because of that. No, we are not a political body. And tell me something. What is more political to talk to power and say, do not do this, do not do that? Is that law? Is that politics? And I said that because I'm not a lawyer. I'm a sociologist. And I've been here so many people saying, no, we need lawyers. That's needed. When somebody says, what are you? I'm a sociologist, space, which is I am specialized in lawyers. That's my kind of speciality. No? But when I saw some people that just read the law without the context, I'm scared. Because the consequences, it is sometimes terrible. You need the text and the context. If you don't look at both, usually the result is tragic. So when you talk about autonomy, there is a challenge about that. And at the end of the day, in my consideration, the bottom line is victims. How do we help? Considering that the Commission is not the first institution, not the first front line. The states should be the one. We are from outside. We have a relation with the authorities, but at the end of the day, we are just 70 people. Who is in charge of that? The Commission, the states, the victim? So if you do not start from independence and autonomy, you can't do this kind of job, in my consideration. So the work that we are doing, we have 74 people. In this, when we talk about professionals, we have more states than lawyers. That's a challenge, certainly. When we talk about our press office and communication, we are talking about one people. Now we are two. No? And supposedly we have to work in promotion. Certainly, this is not the kind of institution that could be everywhere, anytime, any matter. We are having, of course, certain changes, and those are the biggest numbers that we had. This is the good news. We used to be 60. When I just came into office, we were 62. So, of course, that we have to think, how can we manage the regional agenda with this capacity? This is our budget last year. The blue one, it is a regular fund, and the orange one is the specific. Which is the difference? The blue one comes from the regular budget of the OAS. The orange one is the one that we have to manage and look at for. We have to talk about that with partners, countries, most of them state members, some Europeans, and some UN agencies, some others. But as you can see, more than 50%, it is not regular fund. So we used to have some states with a very, very aggressive narrative, but a very, very passive checkbook. They like to have strong speeches about human rights. Our commitment. No? They are not checked. And when we talk about strengthening, during 7 or 8 General Assemblies, we get a beautiful resolution. We want to support the Commission. And the Inter-American, any other body, the court. At the end of the day, we are the poorest system in the world. Even the African is richer, which is often really good. But it's certain kind of schizophrenia. Our governments, and I say that, used to talk about, but they don't like to put money. In this country, you have this idea of put your mouth, or put your money where your mouth is. If that's the conception, there is a big gap. We will see that in next. But what I want to talk about is every year it is the same, and sometimes they have even this. They have some cuts. There are some countries like Venezuela that didn't pay the fee. Brazil didn't pay the fee, and with 4 state members, you have 80% of the OAS budget. United States, Canada, Brazil, in the case of they pay, and Mexico. And I came out saying, how it is possible that United States pays? And I say exactly the same, how it is possible that the Latin American countries accept that. This is not a time where those are poor countries. Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Mexico. Some states, they have a contribution about $5,000 a year to the OAS. And from that 5,000, we receive the great amount of 6%. And for example, there are some countries like Ecuador. They like to talk about strengthening. And they like to organize forums, which is something from time to time really needed. Last time that I gave some to the Commission, 2011, $1,500. So when they talk about strengthening, we would like to know what are they thinking about it. $1,500. It is even enough to pay an airplane ticket from Washington to Quito, in case of they upset our visit. Just in that case. Consider. No? So that's the kind of challenges that we still have. Those are the main donors, considering state members: Argentina, Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, United States, Mexico, Denmark, Spain, Finland, Holland, Switzerland. So you can see there are some European countries that pays more from some Latin American countries. And they say, how is that possible? And I say exactly the same. How is that possible? How do they accept? You know how the court prints the resolutions? Because of Norwegian support. Norway. So that's the kind of, when we talk about the regional system, of course the observance is key. But the question is, we are not in a situation where the Latin American countries, they have not enough money. That's not acceptable in my consideration. Coming from a country who has a National Institution of Human Rights, which budget is $110 million. Just the National Institution of Human Rights. The 33 institutions of human rights in my country represent $200 million. Good for them, if they use smart, responsible, and to protect. So the question is not money. This is the kind of projects that we are running in-house, because we can't afford it outside. We have been working in some projects, and now we are in this project, which is a key one. We tried to get that project free in March, but we couldn't, because we lose 2 positions to engineering. So we can't work as fast as we would like. If we are lucky, next June, July, we're gonna free this portal, which means that the petitioners, the states, the victims, they will have access in their own country without need of somebody else, remote access to the file. And that will be great for many, many reasons. Efficiency, transparency, and many, many things. We've been working in this. If we have to pay for that, it could be about an annual budget, no? All these systems. No? So we are trying to do it in-house. So it takes more time. No? But if we get it, that will be a big jump. No? Hopes that we will have that next June. This is also the kind of things that we are having, the Rómulo Gallegos Fellowship. And it's just to show how it is increasing. There are so many people looking at the commission. Do you know how many scholarships that we have for Rómulo Gallegos Scholarship? 3 positions. And we received 428. We are trying to looking for more. So maybe Notre Dame will be happy to give extra. We have one. Notre Dame is one of the most combative and successful projects that we have. But maybe we can get a little extra in a different project that we are having now. And Notre Dame is those kind of universities that every year we have in our support. And we want to thank also the center for that, because it's really important. Not only because of the need, because it's a very efficient way to talk about leadership in the region. Because those fellows will go back to their country. Civil society, academia, government. Nowadays, those people is running certain very interesting positions. So I want to thank you for that support. Last year was a very interesting one about communication in the Commission. The way that the communication stopped. We have almost 160 press releases. And we decided to try to change our system without going through the OES system to have our own. And we jumped the double because of that. And our website became the most popular in the OES, no? Regarding, for example, the hearings. We have more people watching our hearings than the General Assembly, for example. If you have time, just watch it. It could be both the General Assembly and the hearings. And maybe you join these numbers. I want to show you this, which is very interesting, about press releases. And I have a very interesting conversation with the Ecuadorian ambassador. I was saying to him, you think that you people are really the priority in our agenda? Why don't you take a look about press releases? And can you tell me which is the number one? We are the most active human rights body in the world, in this country. Not only Guantanamo, but also what happened in the southern border, and some other. And when I say to them, you really think that we have an anti-Bolivarian agenda? Why don't you look at the numbers? We have more precautionary measures related to the United States than Ecuador. We have more hearings about the United States. And such topics as immigrant reform, as Guantanamo Bay, as Snowden. Even we talk about the case of this young man who was killed in Florida, Trayvon Martin. The mother of Trayvon Martin came to the commission. And some other cases. And I was saying to him, why don't you watch that hearing? And tell me if the people of your country speak half of aggressive to your government that the people in this country speak to U.S. authorities. And then you can tell me if we have certain specific agenda against certain specific countries. They don't look out these numbers. It is very interesting when you start looking numbers. We decide to come into the 21st century because we used to live in the 80s. And we start talking about social media. And the results were just great. We set up a campaign in friendly settlements. And we connect 2 million people. In local visit to Honduras last December, we present some pictures in real time. And people follow the visit. We have more than 1 million people. Never in our history we have that kind of relation. It's a totally different way of connection, debate, and promoting human rights. LGTBI, we've been working in our history, just in case of violence against the community. And we say, maybe there are differences about LGBTI matters, but what is a common understanding is we all have to fight against violence. That's a common ground. That's not acceptable. Homophobia, lesbophobia, that's not acceptable. Violence, any form. And it was amazing, the kind of answer that we had. Those just examples that we start doing. So, when we start talking about, do we need just lawyers? I don't think so. This is the kind of agenda that we need to improve. Of course that we need lawyers, absolutely. But not only lawyers. We jump up Facebook 10 times. Twitter, we double. And that's the kind of relationship that we have. Is that too much? Is that a little? We will see in the future. The good thing is that we are doing. The bad thing is just last year. But in the future we will see. But it's a different way of promoting human rights. And we learn that mostly from civil society. There are some governments who have a very active social networking activity. And we also are trying to debate with them, look at them. This kind of numbers related to hearings. This is how it's increasing. And those numbers are the biggest that we have. And why do we have more? Because we have no more time in Washington. And why we don't have more time in Washington? We have just 7 weeks a year. Because we can't afford it. We have to pay for that. So in the future, if we have more conditions, we will have more hearings. Because if we have more hearings, we have less time for cases. So there is a battle all the time. But this became one of the most important human rights agenda. One of the most intensive windows. We will have, in 2 weeks from now, a new period of hearings. You can watch, I think today, you can see it on our website, the program. That will be very good. By first time, the Catholic Conference of Latin American Bishops will go to the commission. And you know why? Because of the consequence of the infrastructure projects, mining, energy, and that kind of, in the whole Amazonas. That will be a very good one. Just to give you an example. Last year, we received 1,758 complaints. We have over 300 clients. Mexico, Colombia, and Peru. There is certain kind of dialogue with these numbers and with that reality. Because of the program that we are running, by first time we receive this and we review this. So if we keep going in this way, we certainly will change the backlog that we are having. That's a pilot program that we set up last year, and we are very happy about this. Of those, the majority not too open, almost 1/3. The rest in different considerations. This is regarding to admissibility and merits. We have about 2,000. That's impossible for us. With those numbers, so the Commission set up a working group about the backlog. And we are trying to look out different ways of facing this. For example, the Commission came with different cases about Peru, 60 different cases, 59. And we also are trying to face a case in Costa Rica. We are talking with the court, because with this case, 8 involved total, we can solve 2,250, because it's related to a legal problem. So the Commission started thinking in different ways, because with the situation that we have more states than lawyers, this is possible. So certainly we have to change this. These are the friendly settlements. We want to push for it, but these numbers are not very impressive, honestly, regarding this. No? And we need to change also. I think we need also to think in a different conception, because sometimes what we face is what people want is go to the court. And that's a tension with the petitioners. And that's the kind of challenges that we need to face. What you are looking for. And some kind of cases, some petitioners, some organizations, they look out jurisprudence. And that is not the best way to do it. This is the case, the number of cases that we sent to the court last year, the second highest, 2011, which is just an exceptional. So the inter-American system still work as an exceptional one. In this 30 years, we are talking about 200 cases. That's the great figure. Last year we have this Peru, Guatemala, and Colombia and Ecuador. There are different conditions and situations. From time to time, you have some countries that they want to take the case to the court. From time to time, not. From time to time, they use that case as an opportunity to change. The reaction is totally different. It is totally different. We received more than 500 precatory measure requests last year. The Commission decides to grant 33, which is also a big gap between that. Still that, the Commission is still the more active, or one of the most active human rights bodies in precatory measures. And we have the same relation, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru. And there are just a few from countries like Venezuela, or countries like, for example, Ecuador. It's not the biggest numbers. So when we start talking to them, say, why don't you take out the numbers? And they say, the ambassador say, well, considering the numbers, you have more actions to against the Alianza del Pacífico instead of against the Bolivarians. That's your conclusion, not mine. We have Colombia, Mexico, and United States last year. The top three. This is the kind of work that used to be a big tension with the Commission, which is thematic reports. Commissioners used to play in three different roles. As a commissioner, the one that decides the cases and the precautionary measure, country reporter, and thematic reporter. In United Nations, these three mandates faces different people. Here they have all the same. So there is certain tension between the thematic reporter who wants to promote the agenda, migrants, LGTB, children, whatever you want. But those reports come from the same staff. So there is a certain tension. What do you want? Cases or reports? So this is the kind of balance that the Commission should do. Now we have 9 reporterships and 1 unit. So that means that in the last 15, 20 years, the Commission decides to increase the number of thematic reporterships, which is, it could be something good. But with the same people, it's a challenge, absolutely. Challenges. I just want to give just a brief idea. Funding, increase of petitions. In 2000, we used to have about 900. Now we are receiving the double in 10 years. The monitoring of human rights in the region, the increase of the work of the thematic reporters I just explained, promotional activities, and the compliance of the decision, which is that's a big challenge. As I was saying, we have this 4-circle system. Just 7 states ratify all the instruments. 20, the court, which is this one, then 23, and then 35. So when some states talk about universalization, they refer to this green one. And I would like them to watch out this one. That's universalization. We still have some who didn't ratify Belém do Pará, for example. Compliance. That, in my opinion, that's the most critical question. Not only sentences, but also reports and precautionary measures. Because with that case, you can solve the structural matter. And we are having that kind of dialogue, for example, with Mexico regarding Ayotzinapa. They decide to invite the Commission to give a technical assistance. And we say to them, okay, we're going to look out the case. But we want the experts to look out the structural challenges. Sandra and I traveled around the country in 2011, 4 years ago. And we've been crossing the country from Mexico City just up to Ciudad Juárez. And then from Mexico City just down to Guatemala. And then from Tijuana to Washington, D.C., 3 times. In every single place that we came, tens of people, hundreds of people came out saying, my father my brother, my sister, my daughter. It's disappeared. We came in 2011 with Calderon to talk about disappearances. In 2012, we have a dialogue with presidential candidates. At that time, 2 young women came to talk with Andrés Manuel López Obrador. They come from Guerrero. And they come to talk about the case of her mother and her father. They were traveling from Ayutla de los Libres to Mexico City. They were traveling to look at me and Javier Sicilia. And you know what happened? A municipal police took them. And those police take them to the narco bands. And they disappear. And we went to talk about with everyone. The Guerrero's governor, the attorney, the army, the navy. Every single authority, we talked with them. And those peasants never appear. So what is unacceptable is that they talk about surprise. They knew, and they didn't enough to face that kind of crime. So when we talk about cases, we want to talk about also structural matters. I still remember the name of Eva. The day before that she disappears, she called me. And we went out and looked at every single authority. And they didn't do anything to find Eva. That's the kind of things that we are facing. So when we talk about cases, we also want to look at the structural phase. Sandra and I cried all over the country. So much pain. And they feel surprised. Oh, we didn't know. That's the kind of things that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And that's why we have to insist. And still fighting. And to prepare and to receive the kind of testimony and heritage as Father Ted. Because we won't accept that kind of reality. Fabian and some others know that. We've been traveling a lot in the country. 4 years ago. 3 years ago. And they said that there is no crisis. With these kind of challenges, we finally decide to try to organize based on this. So the restructuration process is going to the Secretariat. This is the kind of things that we are thinking. Different thematic and processes, not regional areas anymore. So with this, I hope that we have a new structure, new organized process, trying to answer this kind of challenges with that resources, with that money, in that context. We would like to have different situations, of course. We would like to have full-time commissioners, of course. We have just 7 weeks a year with them. We would like to have more, yes. But we are an intergovernmental body. So we exist because of the international law on human rights and because of the support of those governments. So the challenge is there. And with those resources, we are trying to face it. So you will have in the future some news about the restructuration process. Hope so. But finally, what I want to say is the Commission is not an end. The Commission is a mean. We can't substitute victims and national actors. We work with them. Nothing can substitute national actors. Based on what? On the idea of justice. on the idea of dignity. And that's the kind of things that we are feel so close to Father Ted. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great, we have time for some questions and answers. We have a mixed group of law students, LLM and JSD students doing specialized degrees in human rights. We have faculty and grad students from across the university. So a wide range of people to ask questions. So with that, yes. Why don't you introduce yourself and mention your country?
Yes, I am Florencia. I'm from Argentina. I'm in the LLM program in International Human Rights Law. And I would like to know more, if you can, like more about how it's going to deal the Commission with these structural problems that you were talking about. Like more details about the individual petitions. If you are thinking also like to do like open like another dialogue with the country about these structural problems, and do it like do both things at the time, like the individual petition and the dialogue, or how are you going to deal with this?
Thank you. Somebody else? Please.
Thank you. My name is Andres Lopez. Sorry. I'm from Colombia. I'm a JSD student in my second year. I have two questions. One is if you have some statistics about compliance of the Commission's like decisions and measures. This is the first one, simple. And the second one is like more complex. Is how you see the role of the Commission as a promoter and differentiate it with like a powerful NGO, if you could tell like that. In the sense that you see, it was very striking for me that you were mentioning that the mandate of promotion of the Commission is to work for changes, structural changes, which is like structural litigation kind of approach, which is usually the approach of a human rights lawyer, advocate. And it seems the Commission should be more like an organ that is resolving cases and not like being an NGO. Well, that's kind of the question.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Judy Saldarriaga. I'm from Colombia. I'm studying the law in international human rights law. I have a question. You mentioned that the Commission should analyze human rights situations in context, I mean, having in mind political context, economic context, but we all know that sometimes the states don't like that the inter-American system is involved in their own issues. So how to avoid that other countries like Venezuela denounce the Inter-American Convention, the American Convention, because you mentioned that, of course, Venezuela left the court, but not the Commission. But in my opinion, that decision is negative for the whole system.
Please.
Yeah. I am Achille, I'm from Cote d'Ivoire, and I'm a student. And my question is relating to the one of you raised. You mentioned that the Commission should take into account the context before receiving case. Don't you think that it is, the role of the courts to take into account the context and the role of the Commission to push for a change in human rights? Because if the Commission should take into account the context, the court will take into account the context. Finally, we won't be able, to have change in human rights.
Okay. Thank you. Florencia, we are trying to face those structural matters in different ways. Regarding the backlog, we are deciding to have a different structural process, recovering the most, if we can say, successful practices. We have some specialized groups as register, as protection, as court group. So we decide to keep working in that idea. So we will have a case and petition group with admissibility and later on merits. So instead of working regional, we will have that specific process based more in procedural than geographic. We used to have different areas. We will have different teams trying to sharing resources in geographic monitoring and thematic monitoring. So we're gonna have a priority the case and petition systems, but also we're gonna have some teams working on that. We decide to start exploring different criteria to manage cases. We will have in March a discussion about that. With some pilot cases, different kind of. And also, we are trying also to involve a big number of interns and fellows. So they are helping us to say faster no. In those cases that there are no reason to come for the commission. So someone do not need to wait 3, 4, 5 years to receive a no as an answer. So under a lawyer's supervision, they will work in a faster. And also, the commission decides to work in 2 fields, 2014 and 2009 to 2013. So those cases of 2014, we don't need to ask for more information, because with the waste of time, we need to ask, what happened with your case when you were a child? 2009 to that. So with this strategy, the commission thinks that in 2 years period, we will be in a much better situation regarding the backlog. And there will be a certain new area of promotion and public policy. So a very tiny team, just the beginning. If we get more resources, we're going to work on that. Because the convention and the chapter of the OAS talk about 3 mandates: defense, promotion, and advising. So we want to work also on that. We are seeing that in most of the Latin American countries, there are some human rights areas. Not only ministers, in different. And we are not talking to them at all. Interior, defense, even certain national agencies. So we want to talk to them. And I will talk to that later regarding your question. Achille, is your name?
Achille, yes.
Achille, okay. Andres, we've been studying about the compliance. As a global idea, the states are very good to pay, but very bad for justice. Most 8 of 10 cases regarding economical particular matter, they attend that. But just 20% regarding justice. There are some cases with non-repetition effect, and when they are looking for structural legal reforms, about 40-45%. And that's almost the same with the court. What we are having is that when we talk about justice, the national structure became so problematic. And that's, in my opinion, the main challenge of this. And I don't think so that the promotional activity is only for NGOs. And we won't be the one who's gonna do the things. We can't. And you have the Inter-American Institute, and you have. But what we would like to is to have the same approach. When we talk about human rights perspective, that's something that we have to carefully analyze. I used to be, as Professor Carosa mentioned, the Mexico City Ombudsman. And when we talk about national plan on human rights, I came to different authorities. Let me give you an example. The housing entity. And we came asking, what do you have to do about human rights? And the director came, human rights? Nothing. I just build houses. Because they even think about the right referring to that. So if we connect the governmental action to human rights perspective, that's the best way to complain, to attend, not only the convention, but also the way of thinking democracy. So that's the kind of dialogue that we are thinking. Of course, I think that civil society is really needed, and they should keep working on that. The Inter-American Institute, we won't fight with them. Exactly the opposite. We want to work on synergy. And from time to time, we need more of that. I used to ask to some civil society organizations, can you explain me what happened, what miracle process happened in the plane, that you travel 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles, 8,000 miles, and you came to Washington, D.C., and you speak with the same people that you don't want to talk in your same city? You just need 30 minutes, cross the city, and speak with the same people that you are facing in the table. Why don't you talk in your country? What happened in the plane? Which is the miracle situation that you came and then you start talking? I said, no, because of the commission. But I said, come on. We can't be in Bogota, we can be in Mexico, we can be in San Jose. We can have some Skype conference, we can have, we are getting into. But you need to talk. You need to, and to both of them, also with the government. And so from time to time, they have such a strong preconception against each other, instead of facing common challenges. So we need to talk everyone, because everyone has a different role. We have a different mandate at civil society and a different mandate at governments. But if we put all our capacities together, we can be faster. Let me tell you in this way. From time to time, we are the kind of people that flies without a frequent flying program. We're just doing things. Maybe if we all work together, the situation could be different. The National Plan of Human Rights was discussed in 1993, almost 20 years ago. Until today, half of our countries do not have a national plan of human rights. Or some have something that they call national plan, without any dialogue, perspective, integration. So when we talk about promotion, that's the kind of debates that we are talking to. More like public policy. We want them to do it. We can do it. And Judy, this idea, of course, I totally agree. When Venezuela denounced the convention, the Venezuelans lose an institution. And that's very sad. And when they say, no, we are out of the system. No, you're not. If you want to be out of the system, you have to go out of the OAS. And they won't. Because they won't lose a political scenario to speak and to fight. But the consequence is quite serious. And that's what we are saying to Venezuela. It is not because of the commission. It is not because of the system. It is because of the Venezuelan people that lose an institution, that lose a chance to have a better protection of human rights. And we're still having that debate with some states. I talked to a chancellor, letting him know that we're going to work in this case, ex-chancellor. And he told me, no, that's an internal matter. That's an internal affair. And I said to him, can you explain me which of our agenda is not internal? which of our mothers it is not internal in any of the countries that we work with? Which is not internal? Every single one is an internal matter. The question is, how do you face the international compromises? When you talk about, there are some countries that used to talk about sovereignty, but it's exactly the opposite. Sovereignty is the base of the international human rights law. That's the reason why we have international human rights law, because we have independent and sovereignty countries. You can't talk about sovereignty when it's time to obey the rule. We still have a very intensive dialogue. Of course, there are differences. And of course, there are some practices to review, of course. But at the end of the day, it's not the Commission. When you talk about what's going on in Venezuela, you can look out the annual report. And we've been saying about the independence of the judiciary in Venezuela. We've been talking about freedom of expression. We've been talking about some other matters. If they look out that and try to fix that without the consideration about the Commission to try to face that challenges, the situation could be different. That's applicable also for Mexico, for Argentina, for Colombia, for everyone. When you saw the structural challenges, and even from the Inter-American system and also with the United Nations system, there are some diagnoses. It's like a patient who come and say, I would like to have the best doctor in this. And then the doctor came and said, okay, this is your situation. And the patient said, come on, why you came? It's against my sovereignty. I'm the one who decides, not you. You're the one who called me. I'm the best of the world. I have the best specialty, and you call me. And then you don't pay any attention. That's the kind of challenges that we're having. Of course, certainly. And we're seeing, we want to talk to them. There is not a fighting position against the government. There is a fighting position against human rights violation. I was talking to a Colombian reporter. Said, Maduro, as a president, deserves all our respect. But we are not agreeing certain things. And we want to talk to him. And we insist that. They think in a different way. They've been attacking, they've been insulting us. But if you saw, you never find an insult against any president. That's not a way that we talk with. We are trying to talk about the situation of the people. And that's the kind of face, the challenge that we have to. And I think the context, it is not a monopoly from the court. And the Commission, when the Commission came with a case, we came with a position. We don't came in a neutral one. We came because we have the idea that there is a human rights violation. And we came to the court saying, we present this case, and the state do not pay any attention on this, and this. So our role is not a neutral one. And in my consideration, the Commission should not be neutral. Should be impartial, which is different. But if you face a human rights violation, you can't be neutral. If you are in the Commission, you can be impartial, which is totally different. But a human rights defender can't be neutral when you face human rights violation. It's not the same. The court is a different place. It's a different situation. They are judges. We know. We have this kind of quasi-jurisdiction body, and we can play, and we should play that role. We can be as naive as with a genocide. No, we can be neutral. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your attention and your time.